So I'll start with my dear colleague Robert to introduce himself.
Thank you. My name is Robert Luciani. I am a computer scientist, yes, and I work with rapid prototyping of AI stuff at the AI framework with Errol.
Favorite programming language?
Favorite programming language is Julia.
Still.
Yes, and if you want to know more, I can talk about it at length.
So that's for the after work, definitely.
Yes, precisely.
Daniel?
Yes, Daniel Tidström. I'm senior partner and consultant at DataEdge. We're a consultancy focusing on data analytics and value creation. Other than that, I have a background both from hands-on data work and hands-on data science work. And last few years, I've been leading analytics teams at companies like Kambi, Nordnet, Epidemic Sound, Spotify, etc.
And my name is Anders Erptig. I'm a tech nerd, been programming since I'm 7, not in Julia that much, even though I tried it a bit. Otherwise, I've been working with data and AI for like 20 years, started in academia, PhD in Linköping, but moved into industry for some time in Spotify and Beltarion, and now heading up the data science efforts at the Swedish Security Service.
Excellent. And I would like to start with some questions and discussions that potentially might leap off the previous presenters. We heard a lot around the roles, and in my head, I could see not just one role, the data scientist. I could see multiple roles, and I know all of you are representing probably a field that could cover one of the things that were in the presentation. So the first question we're going to discuss is, should data scientists be more end-to-end, so covering the entire value chain? Anders, would you like to start?
End-to-end is probably not my favorite question, but I'll go there anyway. I think we've seen an increased specialization in different data science roles. In the last couple of years, we've seen so many new terms. You know, of course, we heard all the DevOps, MLOps, and DevSecOps, and so forth, and DataOps, and data evangelists, and AI evangelists, and so forth. I don't think this increased level of specialization is a good trend, and I'm hoping it's going to stop and go back into having more data and AI being a natural component of any kind of engineering role that you do have. So I am partly saying yes to that. I think that data and AI should be part of any role and going a bit away from this increased specialization that we otherwise are seeing. And as the tooling and maturity of AI and data becomes better, then it should just be a natural component like any kind of other tool like Git or whatnot.
So are you then basically saying that better we become at commoditizing the technology, the less specialized the roles in the enterprise should be around AI and data?
Yeah, that's more or less what I'm saying. And today, unfortunately, it's very immature tooling that we do have, so we need to have specialized rules, but I'm hoping that will change in not too far a distant future.
Robert, what do you say?
I think these specializations have come out of necessity because it's very hard to find individuals that have such a breadth of technical knowledge. And so, people that are both familiar with high-performance database stuff and programming and statistical modeling and AI, it's very hard to find people that can do all that stuff and do it very well. So we, out of necessity, have sort of had to split up the role. But I guess, notwithstanding what we personally believe is good to know, it seems that the evidence is suggesting right now that the more you know about how the stuff that you're building goes into production, the better. So a lot of these roles right now are very disconnected from the actual application of the technology that they're building. And it seems like teams that are more hands-on with how the things they produce are used in the end, both how they're monitored, how, what their life cycle is like and all that kind of stuff, that there's a very big upside to that. So I think that's one thing that's missing and that we'll probably see more people focus on is putting the data scientists, in contact with the operations people.
Great. Anya?
I think most of the things have been said. I think the specialization that we see right now is a good thing because it sort of takes down a lot of ridiculous job ads from a few years ago where the data scientists need to know everything and a bit more. So I think specialization, as Robert says, has been a necessity, but also I also hope, as Anders says, that it will be more of a commoditized tool, like that people also in the business side knows how to apply and what kind of problems to solve with it. So I did a presentation where I sort of tried to compare it like a screwdriver and an electric screwdriver. I mean, one is good if you have one screw. If you want to build a house, you need automated tools. So I think that is where we have to go to realize the full potential of ML and AI.
So for many organizations today, getting started, should they try to hire a full stack data scientist, or should they buy a tool, or just to leapfrog out of what you said today, given the current state of the market, because this happens a lot, and the wrong decisions are usually what makes success or breaks something.
Today, we of course need to have specialized roles and people that do specialize in these competences that we do have. So it would be, I think, a bit naive to think you have a single person that can handle all kind of competences that you do need. So yes, you need to have specialized people today, but you still need to have them in cross-functional team that take the full responsibility to actually be able to take the full product lifecycle responsibility for whatever AI system you build.
Let me ask and see if you agree with this. I think one thing that I've seen is that there's more than just like two stages of maturity. We haven't gotten started yet and we're Twitter, you know. And I see a lot of companies trying to jump from stage 1 to stage 5 and skip all the stages in between. It feels like at stage 1, it's better to have a scrappy hacker. And at stage 5, you might need Kubernetes and a bunch of stuff. And then there's stages in between there, but nobody's very excited about stage 2, 3, and 4, where you start going from the one scrappy hacker that does everything to a hybrid, centralized, distributed team and that kind of stuff. They don't want to start with one person, go to the center of excellence, start distributing parts of the things, then go federated and that kind of stuff. Do you agree that there's like multi-stage like that, or?
Yes, and a poor trend or pattern that I see some companies unfortunately take is that they do have separate teams for this. That they do have the first stage kind of person that you mentioned that build these kind of prototypes and have these proof of concepts, and they build a Jupyter notebook realization of some idea, but they don't have a team that can take the full responsibility. And this is not a one-time, two-time occurrence. It's a very common pattern, and I think that leads to what some people call very nicely the prototype graveyard, where you build a lot of prototypes, but you're never able to realize them, put in production. So I think it's very dangerous if you get stuck in the stage 1 part. And you should realize that you do need to have the competences to truly build cross-functional teams that can put it in production.
Daniel, do you have any?
I don't know. I think maybe what I would like to add is you shouldn't do like either way. I think you need to look at the problem to solve, what kind of capabilities do you already have in place, and then go from there. What do you need to add to the mix? And also to do things sort of incrementally and in parallel. I think you don't need like a huge, perfect data platform in the cloud to start doing machine learning or any kind of data science. So try to be like, to quote like a buzzword, like build, measure, learn. Try to look at what are the pain points right now and try to fix that.
Thank you. Let's switch topics so we don't get stuck on hiring all day, because that we could. So we have a question around best practices. I'm not going to read the entire question out because there's so many. But let's start with best practices for monitoring of AI. So what are some of the good things you've seen in the market? Daniel?
I'll pass on the question.
Sorry for putting you on the spot. These are hard questions. Okay, if you don't have best practices, worst practices. You can always learn from your mistakes.
I like to quote a person that I admire a lot. Is Jan Bosch. He's a professor in software engineering in Chalmers, and he had an awesome presentation. He's one of the best presenters I've ever seen, by the way. So if you have the opportunity to listen to him, you should. But he compared like AI engineering, as he called it, to traditional software engineering. And I think it's a good term. And he basically says that traditional software engineering has really good tool for monitoring and for the whole life cycle of the product. and it's like a skyscraper. You know, it's really mature and nice. And then you're going to build an AI system, and it's like a doghouse, a small, like, crumbling house that you barely can live in. And that's basically the tooling that we have for AI system today, is including monitoring.
Yeah.
So to be able to do whatever you need to monitor, like training, serving SKUs or whatnot, there are very few well-working tools out there for it today. So that's why you needed, unfortunately, a lot of specialized people to be able to do it. And yeah, it's a bit sad, but I think it will mature as we go on.
Have you seen any company do it well? Or well enough?
I can give a small anecdote. You know, one company that you think is really good at this is Google, for example, as we heard here before. I heard when they presented they just launched Quick Access, is this thing in Google Drive where you see recommendations in the top on which document you will open soon. And they had built this kind of nice pipeline for building the training data, and then they put it in production, and they had another pipeline for serving it in real time in inference mode. Unfortunately, the performance when they did monitor it was really, really horrible, and it didn't match up at all to what you did when you trained it. In their case, that they simply had two different pipelines, so the pipelines were not the same, and they had some other logic in the inference pipeline, which caused it to completely misbehave. I mean, even they can't get it right. So no, I haven't seen a company that does it really well, no.
Okay, Daniel, you had a...
Yeah, somehow a comment to Anders, and also like the bad way of doing it, and that is of course thinking not about what the model is actually supposed to do, and that is also maybe criticism to software engineering in a sense. I mean, we can see that the software is working, that the service is up and running, and we can measure response time, often in like nice Kibana, Grafana dashboards in real time. But is the software doing what it is intended to do? And that is probably to help another person do something. So, I mean, experimentation, A/B testing, I think that's an area where a lot of companies are missing out, also in the traditional software engineering. Some companies are doing it well. Most, I would say, are not. And I think that applies as well to the model. I mean, one thing of checking that is up and running, but is it producing relevant predictions? Monitoring that over time and checking for data drift and all kinds of things that might mess up stuff. I think having a focus on the intent of what we build is not having that is a bad practice.
So my interpretation and my point of view on this would be that even though these systems are subpar today, I would say, in what we want or compared to what we want, I think the best way of getting started is at least starting with log management, to at least store the results and the actions. I've even seen companies not doing that. And as you say, following up on the intent and the intention and results, and at least comparing with what you got in backtesting when it comes to results. And then at least some level of data drift management or follow-up on that would be at least a minimum hygiene level as I see it. Robert?
Yeah, I feel like one of the reasons we don't see it well done is because people trip right out the door and do a face plant, where this is obviously not a level 1 maturity thing. This is a more mature capability that you would have. And I think that an important part of monitoring is the people aspect. Is the sort of correct operation at stage 2, 3, 4 before you get to the Twitter scale? You can't hop over that people process thing.
True. So let's once more switch topic. We have a question here around acceleration of adaptation, and especially focused in domains that are quite fearful of change. So I would like to target this maybe towards enterprises where there is a reluctance of change and how we as an AI team can support with getting them to start adopting to the new ways. Robert, maybe you want to start this time?
I think it's very easy to point where it's hardest, and that is usually on data, for example, personal data and that kind of stuff. And I guess that's why people get stuck, because they want to do the cool use case, you know, detecting cancer in the brain or something like that. But if you take hospitals, for example, there's very many ways you can make a hospital more efficient that has nothing to do with patient data itself. And so I feel like if you focus too much on that one thing that you're not allowed to have, you perhaps give up on accelerating adoption because you're not doing any of the other number of potentially impactful use cases that you could be doing.
Daniel?
I think going back to maybe what you talked about, Daryl, going more outside in. I mean, I see too many times where we try to like push a model or a tool that we have built and we're like passionate about. But I think it's the wrong way to sell it to a management team that might not be really up to date on AI. I think in general, starting with the company objectives, the main business problems, and then matching that to a solution to those business problems. If you manage to do that and prove that you're able to solve those business problems with a more positive outcomes than a traditional way, I think that's a really good way of getting the wheels sort of spinning in a good way. I think I've been in that trap myself, where I sort of come from a very technological standpoint and see that, wow, this is amazing, we can do all kinds of stuff. But if you miss the business problems that the executive team cares about, you will have a tough time.
Yeah, 2 points I think on this question. One is more about if you go to the fear, and I guess fear of AI potentially, there is usually a very big misconception out there that AI is going to replace workers and your own job potentially, and I think this is the worst mistake and misconception you can think. And people that say that it's going to, in short term, is to a large extent wrong, I would argue. So AI today, I would say, is mainly about enhancing and augmenting. I think that's the term you used a lot, Errol, as well. Humans, and therefore they should, rather be in fear, be really happy about having more AI augmented or enhancing tools. And I usually speak a lot about this, and I try to say it time and time again, AI is good at some things, humans are good at other things. If we simply use AI for what it's best for, and humans for what they are best for, we get the best of both solutions. And that's obviously what you should do. And if you try to increase the knowledge and understanding about this, they shouldn't be as feared. The second point is more obvious, perhaps, and common. But one thing is to actually do the IT development or the product development that you need to do to have some kind of AI component in whatever product you have. The second thing is to do the organizational development. And if you don't do that and the proper change management for making that product actually be working properly in the organization, you will fail and you will have a lot of fear and a lot of discontent users of that platform. So not understanding the level of work you need to do to also develop the organization and the processes and the way of working that they have to put that product, AI-enhanced product, into the hands of the user and the organization is, of course, very much underestimated and not considered enough, I would argue, in these type of organizations.
I'd like to actually add one thought experiment for the audience here. Because I think a lot of times when we bring this topic up, we think it's the managers. They're stopping us, and us engineers, we want to get stuff done. But I heard a really fun idea a couple of weeks ago where a presenter said, what if, everybody says, my job can't be automated by AI. But what if there was an incentive at your company that said, if you are able to automate your job, you get a year off and a promotion? Then everybody got really creative and they're like, well, emails, probably automate that, and da. So we probably shouldn't just sit here and think that it's just management that's very hesitant to where AI should be applied. But we can probably look at ourselves as well and sort of think about where what we think is possible and isn't possible and is too sensitive for AI can't do what I'm doing.
Well, it makes me think because I remember the conference in 2019 and before, and we had completely different topics that we talked about. I remember when MIT Sloan released a study around how AI was failing in enterprises. There was no adaptation. And then Thomas Davenport released a study with large enterprises beginning of this year, and it has completely changed. Adaptation is currently at the highest level ever. And the conversation has completely changed. And that's why I'm picking up what you guys are saying. And the study also shows that successful organizations doing their AI investments spend 50% of their budget on change management and adaptation. We've been doing modeling right for quite many years, but we've been doing the change management wrong. And I'm personally quite blown away of that, and I think the only way for us to be successful in organization is to start that conversation from day one, not when we have the first results, because then we will never see adaptation.
Well said.
Thank you. So I'm gonna ask you a question, and this might be putting you on the spot, but this is from some of the participants, and I think this was a good one. What is a thing you heard one day and now you can't live/work without? Uncomfortable silence.
I'm very, very dependent and addicted to workflow. I'm an excessive note taker, and I can't work without taking notes constantly. And it's a way for me to just study, because you have to study every day as well. And if I had been doing this for 10 plus years, if my note-taking software were to go away, I would be helplessly lost. I think that's one.
Super hard. Yeah. Can I do 10?
Sure.
Because I think, first of all, one of the best reasons I think to be in the line of business that we are is the pace of change. I love that myself as a very sort of curious person. But if I would pick something it's slightly outside the ML domain, but yours was too. I would say DBT, data build tool for data transformation pipelines. Amazing. It solves so many problems, and it does it in a really, really good way. So if you haven't looked into that, do that. It's open source. You can try it this afternoon.
Great.
I had a really hard time coming up with something, but I just came up with something now. It is probably because I take it for granted, which is that I think a lot of people use databases and tables and do everything in SQL. And there's just some stuff that you can't express as a SQL query, particularly any kind of business logic, any kind of loop, any kind of if statement, that kind of thing that is, sequential. If I could not program algorithms, I would probably not be able to get anything interesting done. So I think, although Python isn't my favorite, I think it's a really good thing that we're sort of moving over to programming and algorithm design for intelligence, and the databases are used more as storage systems.
Nice. Good answers. So let's go back a little bit to concepts. There were some questions sent in as well around data ops versus kind of ML ops. Is there a way of start integrating these two, or are there incomparabilities in between? Daniel, I think the data ops part is more of your area, right?
There are a lot of overlaps, I think, but there are, of course, some unique ways when it comes to ML, like data drift and sort of monitoring the things that are a bit more sort of, what's it called, volatile, maybe. But I think when it comes to like version control, continuous integrations, containerization, there are a lot of things that are, depending on how you do it, of course, but you can build it to some extent with the same components and the same workflows and pipelines, I would say.
Yeah, I guess it's a hard question, but and they both stem from DevOps, in some way, both DataOps and MLOps. And if you take DataOps and think that of data as a product, you use basically DevOps techniques to be able to build data as a product. Then you need different set of tools than you have in DevOps to be able to do DataOps. But the core idea is similar, but you need other tools for doing so. Then if you take the next step and thinking of building ML enhanced systems, of course you need data to do that and code. So you need DataOps and MLOps to work together, but also then to do the DevOps thing for models. And the same reasoning apply there. So you need code to do DataOps. You need data to do ML systems and MLOps. So it's nice, like stack, I guess, of different operation and development tools that you need to support them both.
Robert?
Yeah, I think it's just the name isn't quite as important as making sure you have a methodology to it. And so you can call it MLOps or DataOps, but the point is that you're being very methodical and trying to pick up the best practices from what software engineering has discovered for the past 30 years.
Good. So I want to speed things up a little bit in large enterprises. I remember when I was working for H&M, it was so hard to find new use cases and then get them going and then build them. Is there any tools, methodologies, or best practices you've seen around getting new use cases, ideation of AI use cases in organization that it actually works, or any tips or tricks for organizations struggling with getting the next use case out? Yeah?
But I think one way, and I think Anders was touching on that, I think is the way you approach cross-functional teams or cross-functional companies. I mean, if you have the classical sort of business and IT setup, the business side will likely still order software maybe, or like very static things, because they are used to ordering features, and the IT teams are used to building features. I think if you have a cross-functionality in that case and working more towards outcomes with like OKRs, or more like the tech companies are doing it, I think the product teams they will go away from delivering features into solving business problems, and that makes AI more part of the toolbox to accomplish that. So I think you really need to look at your organizations and how they work, and are you asking your IT teams whether they deliver a feature on time and on cost? Or are you asking them if they have solved the business problem or the user problem? I think it's two like vastly different ways of approaching building technology features and teams.
Robert? Changing out the order.
Yeah, I feel like the thing that has had the most impact is what we've been seeing for the past year, which is I think it's really difficult for engineers to sort of accept the fact that using simple terminology and talking in terms of capabilities and that kind of stuff is absolutely necessary. We're focusing on sending diffs and version control and this and that, but to be able to make these AI systems available to the business, we have to be talking in it's not about calling them stupid, that they don't understand this stuff. It's about talking about certain capabilities that they can connect lines to the problems that are relevant to them right in the moment. And unless they're not going to come to us and say we need these specific tech capabilities. We need to go and say this tech capability provides this general capability. What would you do if you had that capability available? That seems to be the thing that has spurred creativity the most. And then it's an experience thing. The more they try to come up with ideas, the better they get at it.
Cool. I'll try to keep this short. I'm sure I will manage. But 3 things that I'd like to cover here. One is the catch-22 problem. The other is the failing fast concept. I think we mentioned that. I can be brief on that. The second, of course, is value creation thinking. So taking the first one and thinking what is the catch-22 problem, that is basically that you have domain experts and technical experts. If you are just technological driven in what innovations that you will have, you will probably not end up really well. if you just will have domain experts defining everything that should be innovated, you will probably not end up in a good place either, because they don't understand the possibilities with technology. So obviously the best solution is to have some kind of hybrid balance where you are able to let domain experts understand the possibilities of techniques, and you have technical people understand the needs of the domain. So that is a difficult problem to have, but I think that's possible to do if you have the right setup to do so. The second problem then is the failing fast thing. So what happens if you have now 1,000 ideas of different things you want to try? I remember in Spotify we had these kind of hack weeks. We had a week where the whole company, every department, the finance, whatever product team, all of them were just taking a week off doing innovation and innovative stuff. And they came up with 1,000 ideas, but very few of them actually made it to production. That was a big cause of frustration actually in Spotify, that so few things actually made it to production. So a problem then becomes, how can you select out of all the really innovative ideas what you should really prioritize? And that's a really hard problem. So then the idea of failing fast and being able to find the one that truly is possible to do for a number of dimensions that I could go into, but I shouldn't do here. But anyway, that's an important problem. Be able to say, no, I'm not going to continue with this idea, even if I believe in it. And the last point, I'm going to be really quick here, but of course, once you have an idea and you believe this is a good and very important business value, we need to think about the business value, the value creation part. So if you just are considering the technological possibilities with it without taking the end value creation in mind, and you don't build an end-to-end or a real product that you can test for real in your organization, then you don't really know what the value will be. So being able to quickly take the most prioritized things to production and then start iterating, that's the third very important step, I would say.
Can I add just one short thing that I used to talk about a lot at previous jobs, and that is like the difference between, very much sort of the startup analogy, but the difference between problem-solution fit, which is solving a problem, and product-market fit, which is actually also having someone that puts value to it, which I guess links very much to the last thing you said. The first one is to accomplish, and that can be building a model to a defined problem, but is it worthwhile for the company you work at to invest in it? You need to think all that way. So those are good terms to read up on.
I think this is a very interesting area. I like to break it down into, it's not just about getting the ideas, you were onto that, it's also actually knowing how you should execute and implement. There are some studies on Nova Scotia Bank, for instance. They were quite successful going from nothing to a lot. They only did so by actually improving operational processes. So they were quite aware on what they were doing. I would say they had they were knowing the problems that they wanted to solve, and they pretty much know the solution, a simple solution to get ROI. That's a good approach of actually gaining value. You're not going to be very innovative in that process. Then you have other examples that are utilizing the implementation of AI ideas and use cases on known problems, but they want to innovate within that given space. So they know exactly how they want to do. They want to use it a little bit more innovative. And then you have those companies that, in the end, they want to do something completely new. They don't even know the problem, and they don't know the solution. One of the biggest mistakes I see is that organizations don't know what problem space they are in, many times. And sometimes they mix the delivery mechanisms. For the first approach, you can use waterfall, because you pretty much know what you're going to do and how you're going to solve it. It might sound strange to sit on a stage and say waterfall actually works, but it does, if you are building a bridge, for instance. And the other one is more agile delivery mechanism. You work sprint by sprint, you evaluate the results, and you go forward until you have something that actually works, or you discard it. The other one is actually more an innovation approach, which also can be a governed process, although you don't know the different parameters that well. So you need to be very lean, you need to set the KPIs, you need to really shift, you need to be able to pivot. And I think that's a problem in many organizations, because they pick one way of working and they don't even know what problems that they are trying to solve. Good.
It's also a bit painful to admit that you don't know, but I mean, that's a given fact for all of us.
Exactly.
So I mean, working with product discovery and double diamonds and those kind of approaches are great.
I think we need to also be honest with the fact that we are probably going to have to meet management more on their side than they will meet engineering on our side in terms of this hybrid approach that you were talking about, that they need to know more about data science and we need to know more about the business stuff, because in all likelihood, the CEO has made promises to the board about freeing up some tied up capital or something like that, and that's the main priority for the year, but nobody's ever going to find out about it, in the organization. It's all going to be indirect. So we're going to have to sort of figure this stuff out indirectly and sort of meet them a little bit more on their side in all likelihood, I think, in practice.
Great. We're almost at the end of this session, but I think a good way of ending it would, because of course you're renowned leaders within the AI space, well respected. I'm trying to give you compliments here. Can you give some tips on how to become a good or great leader even within the tech space? And try to limit it to 30 seconds so we don't overshoot the time. Robert, what is your best tips for up-and-coming leaders?
For up-and-coming leaders, don't take the easy way out. Always do things the hard way. People that are not afraid of doing hard work seem to succeed better. You just need a little bit higher pain tolerance, but it ends up being worth it. You learn more, and you end up finding pretty neat solutions. So do things the hard way, I guess.
Right, I can keep it short. I have had or sort of developed 3 principles for this that I try to do. I think it's, as a leader, you need to put the right direction for your team so that they know what success looks like, and sort of let them work towards there to have a North Star. Secondly, put them in the right context, and that might be like put your data scientist inside the product team or put them besides the marketing management, depending on what job to do. And then the third criteria is just sort of be the curling broom handler, so to say. Just pave the path and make sure that obstacles are removed, like servant leadership. Those are sort of my 3 bullets.
Perfect.
Cool, and I'll end with saying that I think as a leader, the most important thing you can do is to build the right culture. And what I mean with that is that you should have, for one, like a forgiving culture that you build in your teams. You should have a positive type of attitude. And I remember one person that I admire, that he was asked the question, what is the best software engineer? And people were thinking he would say, this person, he knows everything about whatever technology. But no, that was not what he said. The best software engineer, and I would argue the same for data scientists, is the one that communicates the best. If you have a culture that promotes people to communicate and have a forgiving attitude and positive attitude, you will have a super successful team that you will be really proud of and really effective.
Great. I only have one tip. Trust your team. We are now at time. It is 16:33. We have 2 minutes left, but we can leave early. And after this, we will open the stages. So 4 o'clock, there will be the different stages. Thank you so much for listening in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.